February, and for a lot of people, it's hard to find the motivation to keep going around this time of year. Well, do you want to know how to beat the winter blues? I have three experts on the topic in our studio tonight to tell you how you can survive another Canadian winter and, yes, beat those winter blues. That's tonight here on Crosby Live. Wednesday, February the 15th. Today is one of the best days of the year because it is the day after Valentine's Day, the day that you can show somebody that you love them just because you love them and not because the Hallmark card company told you that you had to tell them that you love them. In my opinion, today is also one of the best days of the year to buy candy. It's like 50% off today at Walmart, Sobeys, everywhere. If you're into candy, today is a very, very good day. Yes, February the 15th. I look forward to it every single year, trust me. Now, I haven't done a headline for quite a while, but after looking at a story in today's Telegraph Journal, there's one headline that I cannot pass up, and it's this one. It says, City bar owner suing promoters over Magnetic Hill Stones concert. Now, this is really interesting. If you've read this story, you may be thinking the same thing that I am. Probably not. Not that many people's minds work like mine, thank goodness, trust me. But if you are thinking the same thing that I am, you might be going, how can you claim ownership to an idea like that? There are many Stones fans in New Brunswick, and I'm sure that there have been a lot of people that have uttered the words, wow, I really think that the Rolling Stones should come to New Brunswick. Well, apparently this guy who owns a bar in Moncton says that it was his idea, and if he hadn't come up with that idea and pitched it to the promoters, the concert wouldn't have happened. Well, buddy, I've got news for you. These are concert promoters. They're thinking of this stuff all the time. Chances are they probably would have thought of it anyway. Anyway, this guy filed a claim today in court, so it'll be interesting to see. How this unfolds. He says, he's got a quote here, that this is a David and Goliath story, no question. Okay, but just because you're David in that situation doesn't mean that you're automatically going to win. Yeah, that happened in the Bible, but God was on David's side. So unless God's on your side on this one, I don't think you have a chance. Just my opinion, of course, and of course I could be wrong. Tonight we're doing a show on how to beat the winter blues. One of our producers, Jeff, told me a while ago when we were planning this show that with our luck, when we do the show on beating the winter blues, the weather will probably be really, really nice and it won't actually feel like winter. Well, he was right. In Fredericton today, it was about 7 degrees, but still here we are. We're doing a show on beating the winter blues because I think there are a lot of people out there who get really bummed out around this time of year. I know that I do myself sometimes. I like personally having things to look forward to. I don't know if you're the same way. One thing that I really look forward to is summer. And here in the middle of February, summer is still a long ways away, so I find for me it's kind of easy to get down. But my guests tonight are here to help us deal with the winter blues, and I'd like to introduce them to you at this time. Liette Collier is the operations manager of Mind Map, which is a counseling service in Moncton. Liette, thank you for coming to the studio today.
Thank you.
Appreciate you taking the time. Drew Merzero is a counselor with Mind Map in Moncton. Drew, thank you as well.
Thank you.
And Dr. Neil Soggie is a psychology professor at Atlantic Baptist University. Neil, thank you as well.
Thank you.
All right, we've got to get into a definition of what the winter blues actually are. Who's best qualified to answer that one? What are the winter blues?
Basically, the winter blues is depression.
Yeah?
In common terms, what we usually call the winter blues, you hear about something called seasonal affective disorder. Basically, that means that during some certain season, you feel depressed.
Yeah.
In clinical terms, we just call it simple depression with a seasonal component to it.
Right.
And lots of things can trigger this, but basically people are trying to live a fast-paced life.
Yeah.
And the rest of nature is slowing down in winter, and here we are, going as hard as we can to try to get everything done and get the kids to the hockey game and get to work and get our reports done and get our laundry all done. And we're just not made to function like that. We're supposed to slow down a little bit during winter.
So is it really a lot worse during this time? Like, is there a time on your calendar where you can actually notice that there's a lot more people that are going through any type of depression?
I see a lot of people that would love to spend their winters down in Florida just for simply that reason. And as soon as they have the opportunity to do that, they do. And it's because there's that time of the year when there's less sunlight and you can't be outside as much, and you just really do need to get away.
What type of true Canadian wants to take off for our winter? That's one thing that I wonder. I know I might upset a lot of people with that comment. I know a lot of people actually do go south, but we're Canadian. We love snow, don't we? At least we tolerate it, right? Yeah. People that you've worked with the counseling service, is this the same type of thing that you come across that around this time of year things get a little bit more busy for you?
I think a lot of times in the winter, people, they struggle with the idea of, well, a couple things really. Right after Christmas, you have Christmas celebration, family get-togethers, and then the New Year hits. And there's just not as much connection. There's a sense maybe of financial woes from the Christmas break, and
credit card statements all coming in.
Yeah, and I think there's also a sense of kind of like what Neil was getting at, the sense of not as much sunlight, more precipitation, less sunlight during the day, and not a lot of people like the cold. Yeah. I do, but not a lot of people like the cold.
So. One of the good ones, that's good.
Yeah.
I hadn't really thought about that, because I suppose for a lot of people that this might be a really lonely time of the year. After the holiday season, everybody heads home with the family, or family comes over to the house usually, and then January 2nd or 3rd, that's usually done, right? Is that something that you find a lot with people that you're counseling, that a lot of people are going through lonely times right now? Yeah.
Absolutely. Some are grieving. Maybe there was a loss through the year.
Yeah.
Just, the first Christmas, they're dealing with
it.
For some people, I agree with what Drew said.
It's the finances, that really hits them. For others, it can be, so many other factors. Marital problems, on and on. So when they deal with these things, especially right in December or January, the weather's bad, you can't do anything about it, you can't run, so you have to face it, and
So as New Brunswickers, what are some of the things that we struggle with? Are there any problems that are, I don't want to say exclusive, I mean, I know we're all human, but are there any problems that New Brunswickers seem to have more than people across the country? Tricky question, I know. I'm quite proud of that one, though.
I hate to say this, because I'm a big fan of Tim Hortons. But I will say that unequivocally, the amount of coffee we drink is really bad on our whole metabolism, especially in the winter.
Is that right?
Because the more caffeine that you have, the more it disrupts your sleep, the more it disrupts your REM sleep, the more it disrupts the hormones that
REM
you
sleep,
need.
Rapid eye movement,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
I remember Intro to Psychology. It's the only thing I remember from that class. I remember that, and I remember that I am not good at multiple choice, and that was my last psych class. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you.
No. And it's the REM sleep that we need in order to establish a good hormonal rhythm in our bodies, and without that, over a period of time, we start to get depressed because the hormones that we secrete when we're sleeping don't stop being produced as the day comes, and we end up being groggy all day, and we just feel tired and dragged out. And coffee, unfortunately, is a double-edged sword, because we do it to stay awake, but at the same time it disrupts our sleep, and we need it more the next day. So,
is it a drug in your opinion? Caffeine, can it be an addiction?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, what kind of you've talked about some of the consequences, but like, what does that mean if people are drinking? I don't know. I'm not a coffee drinker myself, but I know people that are going through a dozen cups a day. It's just ridiculous.
Well, I'm one of them.
Are you?
Yeah. Unfortunately. But and it does have some really serious effects. Back in my graduate study days, we did a study with spiders on the effects of caffeine and other drugs. And what we would do is aerosolize different chemicals and spray them on the spiders and see what kind of webs we came up with. And you would have a nice cylindrical web from a spider that wasn't sprayed with any chemical. You spray them with caffeine, and the thing's a mess.
Disorganized.
Absolutely disorganized.
That's really interesting.
And in seeing that, it should have been a real wake-up for me to stop drinking coffee, but unfortunately, I'm so addicted that that's the way it goes.
I find that interesting that you mentioned that, because you know what I've been finding, and I don't say this to pick on Tim Hortons, most of the litter that I see on streets, it's usually coffee cups. And I know that's not the company's fault, but it kind of makes me think how much we consume that, and I like to sometimes wonder what type of consequences that has for somebody who might, you know, really rely on it to get their day started or to stay up. A lot of students that I know, you know, midnight rolls around, they've got a couple essays to do the next day. Coffee, caffeine pills, and that type of thing. That's got to have consequences on sleep patterns, right? And that must be, you know, how important is sleep to being mentally healthy?
Oh, it's critical.
Yeah?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Sleep, you know, if you don't get enough sleep, I believe a lot of people, their problems turn from kind of a molehill to a mountain kind of thing. They just kind of snowball into something bigger than life, and they find it very hard to deal with.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that I've sat with, if they're suffering from a lack of sleep, their ability to cope with problems is diminished because of the lack of sleep. So yeah.
So it's very important then.
Yeah.
And how are we doing as New Brunswickers when it comes to sleep? Are we sleeping enough? No?
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so either.
Is that right?
Oh, I don't think so.
So what are the easiest ways to get around that? I mean, it's got to be more than just scheduling more time to be lying down in a bed. Are there things that we can be doing through the day that make it easier to actually fall asleep at the end of the day?
Not drink as much coffee.
Yeah, that's true. Stay away from the caffeine. Is there anything else that might come to mind that, you know, that would help? Yeah?
Also not watching TV past 9 o'clock.
Yeah. Well done. When Crosby lives off the air, you can go to bed. Well, very well done, Neil. Thank you. But that's an interesting point, because I suppose it's all the. I do a lot of media studies, and this is something that we study in that field quite a bit. Is how a constant bombardment of information just gets your mind racing, and it's really hard to slow the mind down after that type of. Is that kind of what you're alluding to?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. You should take, you know, even some light reading might be okay, but not even too much of that, because there again, you know, you really need to take that 10 or 15 minutes before you go to bed to just have a quiet time to relax.
Yeah. A professor that I had once called it critical space. He said that electronic media doesn't really allow us critical space to control the environment to actually, whereas with the medium of a book, you can read a page or two or a chapter or two, and then you can stop, you can process it on your own time, and you're not being controlled by the medium. So I had never really thought about how that might affect sleep, though. I like sometimes watching a movie before I go to bed. I'm really into documentaries. Watched a really cool one last night called The Fog of War. Have you seen that?
Oh, no, I haven't.
Very, very well done. It's about the life of Robert McNamara. He was the I'm off on a tangent here, I know. I know. He was the Secretary of Defense for the United States during Vietnam. Really, really interesting documentary. Anyway, I found that after I watched that my mind was just racing, and it was about 2 or 3 o'clock last night before I was really able to fall asleep.
Yeah, and I don't think it's just movies either. I think a lot of Maritimers, kind of like what Neil was saying, they're just so fast-paced that they can't slow their mind down. Yeah. And I've talked to a lot of people who struggle with that. Some people, they just worry about a whole lot of things instead of finding an outlet, perhaps to really look at relaxing their mind and slowing themselves down. Light reading is a good idea, and there's any number of things that a person can do, really.
I'd really like to get into maybe a bit of a list that we can create of outlets for relieving stress. But first we want to take a phone call. This is from Diane in Fredericton. Diane, how are you tonight?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you doing with the winter blues?
I never had the winter blues in my life.
What's
That's
your
what
secret?
I want to know what you're talking about.
Come on, well, you've got to have a secret. Don't you think that it's easy around this time of year to kind of get bogged down a bit and
No.
No? I'm listening. Tell me your secret, Diane. I'm listening.
Drink lots of water.
Yeah.
When you get up in the morning, thank God for another day.
Okay.
And do something nice for somebody once a day. If it's walking their dog or whatever. I'm a senior, so I can sit back and say this.
Yeah.
And then eat your meals, and there's all kinds of volunteer work.
Yeah.
They're crying for volunteers everywhere.
Yeah.
Cancer Society, the Manners, the vets, or whatever. Then at the end of the day, like Neil said, quiet time, thank God for the day.
So it's a spiritual thing as well, right, Diane?
Oh, yes, Rick. Maybe we could talk to you.
Well, that's Diane. Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? I appreciate your comments tonight.
No, I love your show.
Oh, thank you.
And no, I don't have the winter blues. I'm sorry, but...
well, you've probably helped some New Brunswickers with some ideas.
Yeah.
There's something that you mentioned that I want to ask my guest about, but Diane, thank you very much for your call tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
I think one important thing that Diane brought up is taking the focus off ourselves.
Absolutely.
How important is that?
Yeah. Oh, it's essential.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Anytime that you're living life, stress becomes very important to us and weighs down on us as soon as we start thinking about ourselves. Viktor Frankl used to say that what we need is something that transcends ourselves, which we can serve. And it's only in finding that thing which we can serve that we really find a purpose and a meaning for life, a reason to wake up in the morning, essentially.
Yeah.
You know, so I think what Diane, was it?
Yeah.
I think what she said, describes a perfect day, quite honestly. I mean, you need to wake up in the morning. A little bit of physical activity is essential.
Yeah.
Being out in the sun is essential. Having a good meal and serving people, absolutely. Yeah. She hit it right in the.
It seems like there's so many things in our society, though. Like that, I love all of those ideas, but it seems really utopian. There's so many things that we go through in one of the day that make us want to focus on ourselves and on being fast-paced. How do you battle that? Are there any ideas that maybe you have to kind of combat that a bit?
I'm just thinking the choice.
Yeah.
You have to make the choice, and you have to take the steps. I mean, something as simple. She mentioned water.
Yeah.
Something as simple as water.
Yeah.
It's so good for you. There's so much that it does for your body.
Yeah.
And we stay so busy.
Yeah.
That we, at the end of the day, did you really drink enough water?
Yeah. Yeah.
Diane.
Yes.
Mentioned so many different things that I thought, she's right on.
Yeah.
So.
Is there anything else that she mentioned that maybe you talk to your clients quite a bit about and you really try to emphasize?
She mentioned the volunteering.
Yeah.
Give to someone else. Give yourself away. Again, the water, the exercise.
Let's talk about the spiritual end of it. Diane
Absolutely.
talked about that, and I know we're not just talking about strictly religion here,
right.
Okay? But how important is being spiritually healthy to overall health and mental health?
I think it's totally relevant.
Okay.
Absolutely.
What type of consequences would it have on the body if somebody was going through some sort of spiritual turmoil? I'm asking some hard-hitting questions tonight. I am proud of myself. Regular viewers know that I don't ask really journalistic questions. Tonight, this is a change on Crosby Live, let me tell you. I've been going to J school. I've got my questions all figured out. But seriously, I'm wondering, what kind of consequences might that have for somebody who's not spiritually healthy?
On a spiritual basis, you're looking at the stories and the relationships that guide your life, and especially that relationship with God that guides your life. And you need to have relationships, first of all, to know who you are as yourself and to know what it is that you're supposed to be doing. Right. So that's an essential first step for living life. Because if you don't have a relationship with others and with God that tells you who you are and where you are and why you're here and what you're supposed to be doing, I mean, what's the point of getting up in the morning? There isn't a point.
Yeah. And obviously with God, that can be God in an institutional religion sense, or in any other sense, right? In a higher power of any other kind. The only reason I say that, obviously, is I don't want to limit that just to a Christian faith or anything. That can be across the board. Okay, Drew, you had mentioned various outlets to dealing with stress. Expand on that for me.
Well, one of the things that we've kind of been talking about here, I think one of the main issues that fuels problems is the lack of community, a lack of having relationships and people you can go talk to. This can happen for some people, maybe growing up in a family where it was there was a lot of neglect, and maybe they were bullied at school or whatever. These kind of people who lack real true community, I think they struggle quite a bit more than other people. And for those people, I think it's very important to try to find some relationships where they can be themselves, be able to talk about things in a very realistic manner, not be judged for how they come across. That's one very important thing. I think another thing is just find things that you enjoy doing, things that are going to get your mind off of life's stresses, and just go out and do something you really enjoy. That could be going for a walk. That could be taking up a hobby you really enjoy. But I think oftentimes we don't do that enough. Like, we're so busy that we neglect those things, and I think it's very important to find things that really work for you as an individual to rejuvenate yourself.
Do people who have lesser amounts of social relationships, maybe people who might be more introverted, do they often find themselves in stressful situations more than those who have a lot of social relationships, really active in the community?
Well, they certainly cope with it differently.
Right?
I can't say they'd have necessarily more stress.
Okay.
I think people who have loving relationships that they can go and, like I said, be themselves, have one more advantage in the sense that they can talk it out and work through it a bit better than those who internalize things and try to keep it bottled up inside.
Yeah. Well, we need relationships, right?
Yeah. But at the same time, relationships can be a source of stress themselves.
Yeah. That's right.
I mean, anytime I do an assessment as far as stress goes, some things I ask: when was the last time you went on a vacation? When was the last time you went on a vacation with your family, visited your family? Because Christmas time and holiday times, while ideally it should be a time of rejuvenation and celebration, it's usually not.
Yeah.
And there's usually quite a bit of stress in the relationships that go on there. And, you know, age-old relationships, things dating back to our early childhood. And we have to deal with that all over again as an adult. And so those types of things can be very stressful as well. So, you know, it's again this double-edged sword. It's something you need, and it's an essential thing. But sometimes the best things that are in our life are also the worst things.
Yeah, no, I understand that for sure. I heard about a really interesting study a month or two ago where there were monkeys that were placed into a controlled condition, and some of the monkeys were given it was a post with just some foam wrapped on it, I think. You might be familiar with this study. Yeah, from my understanding of it, the monkeys that had the post where they could at least cuddle up to, even though it was an inanimate object, they survived. The monkeys that, and I hate animal testing, absolutely hate it, I didn't want to hear about the story, but the monkeys that didn't have that in the room with them, something that they could be, even though it was an inanimate object, something you could be affectionate with or at least get some sort of comfort out of, didn't survive. Are we the same way?
Absolutely. You just look at children. There's lots of examples in California especially of children that have been neglected, seriously neglected, and not only is their development stunted and their physical health stunted, but I mean there's actual brain damage where the brain has failed to develop. A lot of hospitals, you know, there's the term failure to thrive for young children, and a simple treatment for that is simply touching them. You know, and just the simple power of touch is a very powerful thing for young people and for adults. Absolutely. Need to have that real essential intimacy with somebody.
I find it interesting what you were mentioning about Christmas, because I hadn't really thought about it as a double-edged sword. Just what you were mentioning a couple minutes ago, but I suppose that can, while sometimes Christmas is a great stress relief because it's supposed to be that festive time of the year, it doesn't always go that way, I suppose. Do you, with the counseling service with MindMap, January get a lot more busy because you're kind of coming out of the stress of the holidays?
I believe so.
Yes? So what do you take out of that? What do you tell, I don't know if I'm looking for free counseling here, but what do you tell your clients, you know? Should I lie down on the table here?
Sure, makes you feel comfortable.
It probably wouldn't, not on this one, probably not. But what do you tell clients that might be in that position? Like after, you know, coming out of the stress of the holidays, like what do they need to do to get through the next few months?
Drew?
With holiday stress.
I think that, again, that all comes down to what exactly in the holidays that's stemming from.
Well, let's focus on family situations. Sorry, I guess I didn't really give you a place to mention. Sorry about that. Family situations, because I think with the holidays, family situations are probably going to be, you know, probably more than economic, I'd say, would be something that might create more stress.
Well, usually when you sit down, and that doesn't have to be just Christmas, it can be birthdays, anniversaries, or other functions throughout the year. Usually when you sit down with a client who goes through different family issues, you sit down with them and you just kind of draw out what's the main concern. And oftentimes it's somebody not feeling respected or understood. Maybe they feel like someone else is favored in the family. When it comes down to those things, it's very important to help them both to mature in that area individually, but also to go in and talk one-on-one with that person and be really open and honest about the situation. To let something like that kind of curdle and stagnant for so long can be very damaging for the family relationships and can also be damaging for relationships they plan to build outside of the family, i.e. a romantic relationship. So it's really important to be able to sit down and work individually on that, but also with the family member, I think.
How much of that is just holding on to a grudge and just not being willing to just confront a situation? Is that oversimplifying it, or? I'm asking some really good questions. I'm liking this. I never stump people.
The idea of forgiveness and reconciliation has been studied quite a bit in the last 10 or 15 years. And this idea of forgiveness, people who forgive and who can go through reconciliation are physically healthier, they're mentally healthier, they enjoy life more. But it's also very hard to do. Sure. And it takes a lot of being able to let go and talk things out, and basically it comes down to letting go of the situation. And
I think what you said there, to some extent, is very true. Lots of times it is holding onto a grudge. But as a counselor, how do you deal with that? I mean, you can say, suck it up and get over it. Right. That doesn't do anybody any good. And anytime you do the direct approach working with people, it never works. So there needs to be that time of Drew listening to somebody and pouring their heart out for days, weeks, months, until they start to realize that it really is holding a grudge, and then they need to do it. So there is a long process that goes into it. It might be as simple as that, absolutely.
But it's not instant, and I think sometimes that's, in my own experience, I've had some confusion around that word. Sometimes you think, oh, I've just got to let it go. Well, okay, if in my mind I've said I've let it go, it's not a quick thing. Exactly. It takes months sometimes. Is that something you try to tell a lot of clients, is that, look, don't, set a realistic goal about this. Is that important?
Absolutely. You have to know where you're going, right? So you have to work through things. You have to take the time. And you have to understand, and you have to deal with forgiveness. Not everybody's ready to look at that, let alone hear it, right? So
it's tricky that way.
It is.
This is a cool conversation for us to have. We've got to take a break for a couple minutes. When we come back, I want to talk about some more ways that we can deal with stress. I want to know how fast we live in New Brunswick, because I think we have this idea that it's so slow here compared to Toronto, and Toronto being the center of the earth, of course, right? Anyway, more on this conversation, beating the winter blues, in 2 minutes' time here on Crosby Live.
The Rogers Television Viewer Response Line at 1-888-307-8862 or visit our website with your comments.
It's a void. It's a plane. No, wait, what the heck is it?
That's weird.
It's Acity Man, the Fleistacadian superhero.
Friggin' Twin Peaks.
You won't see this superhero leaping over any tall buildings. Woohoo! But you will see him exclusively on Rogers Television. Catch him if you can, Saturdays on Rogers English and French networks.
Okay, that's it, that's all.
Could I get a refill, please?
Luke, show the class your drawing.
Your World Right Now, only on Rogers Television.
The Movie Network is proud to present the newest addition to our video on demand lineup. HBO. Movies, specials, and critically acclaimed series. Favorites including Curb, Rome, and coming soon, Season 6 of The Sopranos. The Movie Network on Demand delivers hit movies, series, and now the best of HBO, all part of your subscription. No other network has it. HBO, only on the Movie Network.
Make it part of your personal TV experience, exclusively from Rogers Digital Cable.
Your World Right Now. now, only on Rogers Television, New Brunswick.
Welcome back to Crosby Live. Tonight we're talking about beating the winter blues, and in our little caption on your screen it says, without going to Florida. And just try to put that up there to put a smile on your face in mid-February. It's all I got tonight. I'm sorry. In case you're just joining us for the second half of the show, I'd like to reintroduce my guest that I have in studio at this time. Liette Collier is the operations manager of MindMap, which is a counseling service in Moncton. Liette, thank you again.
Thank you.
Drew Merzero is a counselor with MindMap at Moncton. And Dr. Neil Soggie is a psychology professor at Atlantic Baptist University. Thanks again to all of you for taking the time to come in to Fredericton tonight to do this show. We've been talking about beating the winter blues. We've been talking about dealing with stress, why we're stressed out. I want to get into the solution side of this, and we kind of touched on that in the first half, really good ways to deal with stress. During the break I was talking, Drew, mainly to you about the element of time and just taking time to tackle certain issues. You said that that's important, but you said there's something else that people need to do as well.
Yeah, the idea in our society of immediate gratification, time is very important. If we're ever in a position where, either as a counselor, as a friend, or as a parent figure, to help somebody out, we have to realize that they need to be heard. They need to feel like they've really been heard on their issue. To offer somebody advice prematurely can be sometimes more harmful than not offering any advice at all. Just because people aren't ready to hear that yet, it's very important to be able to sit down with somebody, let them know that you understand where they're coming from, let them know that they've been heard, and respected for what they're going through, and then you can start introducing different ideas for solutions, and they're usually better received if you do it that way.
Isn't talking one of the best ways just to, isn't that kind of a Freudian idea?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah?
The talking cure.
Right. Tell me about that. Like how, because in what I know of Freud, that's something that he really found, is just having people that he worked with just talk through the issues. Took them a long ways.
In Freud's idea, there's a lot of conflicts that are going on inside of us, and there's a lot of voices, essentially a lot of different people inside of us that we develop as we grow up. And
according to Freud, we all want to sleep with our mothers.
That's right.
Yeah, that could be problematic as well, I think. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. I just throw that in there. Anyway, sorry.
But in talking it out, in having a way to express ourselves, it's an innate way of organizing things in our own minds, so that we can get them out, we can recognize the things that are going on. Because a lot of times we don't ever let anybody see these nasty little people that are running around in our head, and we don't like to admit them ourselves, and they get out of control.
Well, wasn't it Freud who said that essentially we are all neurotic people? And it's only those of us that are brave enough to confront that actually go to counseling of any sort, right? See, I find that really interesting, and at the risk of, I guess, admitting that I am neurotic, I agree with that. Like, we all carry our own baggage, we all carry our own life situations and things that we're dealing with. I don't think that there's anybody that doesn't have something that's weighing on their mind a bit. Some have more than others, but I think, and I'd love to know what you think about this, I think sometimes we might convince ourselves that we have more problems than others, and we're not normal. Man, I've got a lot of stuff going on. What's wrong with me? Everybody else seems to have it all together. Do a lot of people think that?
There's another theorist who talks a bit about talking out your situation or your problem or your story or whatever you want to call it in such a way that you put words to it. Because a lot of people, they say, I have a lot of problems, but they haven't put words to that. And when they start having a chance to really talk it out, they begin to learn that, hey, it's not that big of an issue, and there are alternatives that can help me out here. And just the idea of being able to put words to what's going on, and actually having a chance to admit to yourself and to somebody else that there is an issue. That's the first step. Like that's a huge step towards finding a solution for your troubles.
It's funny how in life sometimes when we go through a really trying situation, at the time it seems like the worst crisis ever, and it very well may be, but later on down the road, sometimes you can look back on that and realize, wow, I'm really glad I went through that. And to kind of have one of those life change periods.
It can be very beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you find that I'll ask you both, with clients that you maybe work with, that when they're explaining a situation to you, do you ever find yourself thinking, you know what, this might not be that negative of a situation in the big picture?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How it must make it tricky to talk to a client though, because they want the solution then.
Yes.
Probably, and in your mind you might be thinking it's probably good for this person to be experiencing that. How do you deal with that conflict?
I think Drew said it earlier.
Yeah? You
have to take the time to let them see, the good, the positive that will come out of it.
Yeah.
But absolutely, there's the situations do happen where you can just really see, it appears negative.
Sure.
But you're going to be all the better for it. You're going to be all the stronger for it.
Yeah.
You don't see that now. But in time, you will get to that point.
Yeah. Did you have anything to add to that, Drew, maybe?
Well, one of the things that you find when someone puts words to their story, they use a lot of negative terminology. What I mean by negative is they put themselves down. And anytime that I hear someone putting a story to an issue in their life, if they use any positive language, I like to draw that out.
Okay.
Because it shows me that they're thinking in some manner of hope.
Right.
And it shows them that too.
Can you give me an example? Like, just maybe even create a situation somebody might be going through where
Well, I mean, if someone came into me and said, look, I've been struggling with depression now for 12 years,
right.
Okay, and they describe over a course of, let's say, 30 minutes, just the struggle they've had. If they were to stick something in like, over the last 12 years, I have found that if I go for a walk, it's really beneficial and it calms me down. But then they go back on the negative. I'll pull that comment out and I'll hold it, and when they're done, I'll ask them about them. Well, how has that been beneficial? That could be something that could be very helpful for them. It could also help create other alternatives that can help them deal with their issue. A lot of times when we go through problems, we think they're insurmountable, like they're bigger than life and we can't get over them. And drawing out those things helps them see, hey, wait, I can grab this by the horns and really harness it. So, yeah, it's always cool when you draw that out, because they kind of have a light bulb moment. Hey, you're right,
Bit of an epiphany.
They figured it out, so it's good.
It's a rewarding thing to go through when you come to one of those realizations, and then you hold fast to it. That's the tricky thing. I know in situations that I've gone through, sometimes I get this great idea of how I'm going to conquer this situation, and then it just, I don't know. It just kind of goes out the window, I doubt myself sometimes, I'm sure there are others who doubt themselves as well. One thing that I wanted to bring up, I wrote this down during the break, Dr. Phil, and where I'm going with this is, it seems to me that often, we were talking a little bit earlier about how we often look for the quick fix, and it seems to me that with the popularity of Dr. Phil and his show, and I don't think it's all negative, but it seems to me that people are kind of going to that to get the instant answer and go, that's my problem, and Dr. Phil just told me exactly how I'm going to fix it, and I'm going to do it as soon as the show's done. It can't be that simple, can it?
No way.
Yeah.
Not in a million years is it that simple. And I cringe every time I flip through the channels and I see Dr. Phil, I think
do too. And when I see Oprah and when I see any other talk show, I cringe, including mine. I cringe as well.
And it's simply for that reason, what he does on the show is not counseling. And I think people miss that fact. It is entertainment. And what he's doing there is, mocking the people and giving them a little bit of maybe the advice is good and sound if a person could implement it that quickly, but nobody can. I mean, it takes us years to the minimum of 8 weeks to develop a habit. I mean, you don't change your life in one day, although, small little steps. But absolutely, it's a tough thing to fight against that kind of attitude that gets spread out there by personalities like Dr. Phil.
A minimum of 8 weeks to develop a habit. Okay. How long? I'm sure there's not an exact number, but what about breaking a habit? What about Same thing. Minimum of 8 weeks.
Simply, you're looking at replacing that habit with something else. And
That's
in order
interesting.
to really ingrain it in yourself, it takes a length of time.
See, I had never really thought of it that way, because to hear that it takes 8 weeks to develop a habit, that makes sense to me. But to actually get out of a habit, I think a lot of times it's just, take smoking for example. I've had a number of friends who want to quit smoking, and it seems like they wake up one day, I'm not going to smoke anymore, and just kind of look at them and go, yeah, right. Give you couple hours, get stuck in traffic. I suppose we don't really get stuck in traffic in New Brunswick or something like that, but you know what I mean? Like, it just, they're back to it really quickly. So the process is equally as long to get out of a habit as going into it. Yeah.
I think a lot of times too, people don't give themselves time to deal with something like that, and when someone comes up and says, I'm going to beat this issue, and then they fail, they deal with a lot of shame. Not only guilt, but shame. There's a problem with who I am. And so anytime that I sit down with a client, I try to help them see that, look, you know, let's take this slow. You know, we don't have to conquer the world here, and there's no you know, pedestal that you have to reach in a certain amount of time.
Sure.
Let's just walk through this slowly. And let's celebrate the baby steps that you take. Like, people are afraid of taking the small steps. They want to take that grand leap to the top kind of thing. And seldomly, if ever, does that work. So,
fear of failure, that's a really interesting point. I think that keeps a lot of people, including myself, from actually taking that first step, especially when it comes to getting over a big life situation that might be kind of weighing you down. How do you get past that?
Well, I think a lot of people don't see failure as a normal human experience. They think, I'm the only human being alive who's ever failed.
Right.
The fact of the matter is, we all fail.
Right.
And when we come up against that, the idea, like, we feel like we can't feel the failure. We think that we have to kind of push it away or forget about it, and somehow it'll just magically disappear. I respect people who meet failure and really want to struggle through it and get through it. You know, they're not idealistic in the sense that they think, you know, I'm going to make this huge step to the top where I was, you know, 6 months ago or whatever. They're like, you know, this is where I am now, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to walk through this issue. And again, getting back to spirituality, community, having those outlets in your life, those are very important, I think.
And recognizing failure is a step to success. You know? And I know that is cliched, but there's truth in that, I think. And I know in various situations that I've come across myself from people that I've talked to, it's really been that fear of not being successful that has held somebody back from taking the steps to resolve a situation. And again, I don't exclude myself from that. I'm very much human myself. All right, we're going to take another phone call. Matt in Moncton. Matt, how are you doing tonight?
Not too bad. How you doing?
Good, thanks. Winter blues, what do you think? Is this something that you go through?
Not myself, no.
No?
A lot of people probably do, but I can't believe this kind of a subject would be on TV. I was kind of surprised to see it.
Is that good or bad? Is that a compliment?
That's good. Because,
good, cool, well, thank you.
More people need to be aware of, just people have a demeanor about their life. Like they'll go about it a certain way and view everything, oh, this, you know, this sucks, or this, you know, I don't want to do this. Oh, this is going to happen now. Great. And it's a negative connotation to their whole life, and it's young and old people both. And there's other people like myself and friends of mine. We read into a lot of books about the mind, the human mind, and a lot of, you know, different methods of meditation or whatever you call it. And there was times when I thought, you know, that was a bunch of crap, right, and a bunch of hogwash. You know, my friend said, "Oh, I'm meditating." I said, "Really? That's great." You know, I didn't care. I didn't see it as something that I do. But anyway, I guess in the long run, you can be so happy if you, you know, if you just open your mind up to things like the sun, fresh air, forgiveness. And it might sound cheesy, but it's very difficult to do. It's very difficult. I transform myself in a way.
Why do you think it is that difficult, Matt? Because I agree with you. It seems like those are common sense things, and they're free.
Because you have to take everything that you think of and the way you think of it and almost toss it aside and wipe the slate clean. It's very, very deep and hard to explain. But always reminding yourself that feeling you had when you were so happy, well, what really, you know, brought that on? Was it really what happened, or was it just your, you know, your own soul? It's a matter of being able to tap into it. And it's very difficult, but I think anybody can do it.
Matt, I really appreciate you taking the time tonight.
Yeah, no problem.
Have a good night, man.
You too.
Okay. What do you think of Matt's comments?
I think it's very true. Sometimes when I'm sitting with clients, I'll ask them, how would you be responding if this didn't happen in your life? Like, if you didn't lose your job, would you be responding like you are right now? And I mean, everybody's going to respond to something like that in a certain way, but by drawing that out and saying, if this didn't happen, how would things be different? It gets them thinking, you know, why am I going to let this thing beat me? You know, I do have the power to change my thought process in order to think more positive thoughts and think more highly of myself. Because, you know, a lot of people define themselves by things in life that may or may not work out for them, i.e. a job. To me, that never truly defines a person. It's how they enjoy life and live life, and their quality of life that defines who they are, and that's in every area of life, and I think that's very important.
Okay. Yeah. Neil, anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, you know, there's a few things that Matt talked about that as a professor I really noticed. First of all, he talked about meditation, and he talked about the sun. Now, if we went to a psychiatrist for depression, we would be given an antidepressant. What that antidepressant does is it allows a chemical in our brain called serotonin to build up, and that reduces anxiety and lifts depression. But if you meditate, it's been shown that meditation also lifts serotonin levels. If you wake up in the morning, expose yourself to the sun, or if there isn't a sun like there is in New Brunswick early in the morning, they have something called full spectrum lights, and they suggest that you use 10,000 lux, a very bright full spectrum light, for 15 minutes in the morning. And what that does is it stimulates the hormones to turn off your melatonin, which puts you to sleep, and turns on your serotonin. And in 90% of cases, that simple act of having a bright light or sunlight for 15 minutes cures winter blues. You know, so, and we're this full integrated being. You know, it's not just a mental process or a spiritual process, it's a biological and chemical process, all mixed together, and it all works together, you know, along with society and our groups and our relationships to create who we are.
Okay, I've got a number of thoughts that I want to share, but I want to get Leetta, I want you to have a chance to get in on this as well. Is there anything that you want to reinforce, or anything that Matt might have said that sticks with you?
I think one area that I guess he just made me think of is the validation. Is that people are afraid at times just to even say, I'm depressed, or something is wrong, or you know, whatever terminology. And I think they just simply need to be validated in that. Whether it's called winter blues or depression or whatever, it's real, and it really affects people. And there are obviously some simple things that can be done, and some maybe not so simple, but there are ways around it, and people need to know that it is okay to say, you know, if you go to the doctor and you have, you know, a wound or whatever, it's right there, it's physical, and you're okay to go to the doctor with a wound. But if it's depression, there's a fear of going forth and saying, I think something's wrong. You know? And I think that was, when he was speaking, I thought, you know, just the validation. Just the fact that, you know, to be able to say, it's okay. It's real.
Makes me think of the gift of pain. You know what I mean? Like we do everything we can to shut our bodies off from pain with Tylenol and everything else and to get rid of it, but it's without pain we would be toast. We'd be done. You know, like leprosy, right? You know, a lot of people think that with lepers that their body is the way that it is because the disease is eating away at them, and that's not the truth at all. From my understanding of it is that their nervous system,
they can't feel pain anymore, and it's simply walking down the street and stubbing your toe and you break your toe.
No recognition of it. But the same could be said, couldn't it, for the emotional side of things, for the mental side of things?
For sure.
If your body's saying, focus on this, we've got a problem with something, and you're going, no, suppress it, block it out, there are consequences to that, right?
Oh, for sure.
Why do you think there is such a separation in our society between mind and body? And maybe I'm not right in that. Do you think that we try to separate that? It seems to me like we do, that we go, you know, emotional things that I'm going through have nothing to do with how much I exercise or how I'm taking care of my body physically. Do we separate those two a lot?
I think we do. I think we're slowly learning that there is an integration. You know, I blame Plato for that.
Blame Plato? Wow. I hope you have a good argument behind this.
Well, you know, I mean, Western civilization has been basing everything that they do on Plato for, you know, 2,300 years. And slowly we're recognizing that, you know, there is this connection between the mind and the body, and we're one being, we're an integrated being, and that's the way it should be. You know, the ancients before Plato all recognized that, and it's just after Plato we kind of.
So what did he try to put forward? Because I'm not really familiar with.
Well, basically he said, you know, he said that there is the spirit, the psyche, the mind, right, and there is the soma, the body, and they are separate. Okay. We should try to live in the spiritual, psychological realm, and separate that from the body in some way. Now, as a student, Aristotle disagreed with that, but he wasn't nearly as popular as Plato, so there you go.
No, but I understand what you're saying. That makes a lot of sense. It seems like, you know, if we can't see it, it doesn't exist, right? It's one of those things. It's harder to focus on problems that might be of the mind when, where does the mind exist? Where does consciousness really exist? It must make it a little bit more tricky. We've been talking a lot about depression. I wish I'd asked this earlier in the show, other than the obvious answer of just feeling bummed out all the time, or maybe part of the time. How do you know if you're depressed? Like, what is the definition of depression? Drew, maybe.
Well, there is a clinical definition, and I'll turn that over. But
will I understand it? Probably not.
But the idea of depression that I've come to learn is it's kind of a general term now to describe feeling down and bummed out, like you said. Yeah. It could describe just waking up someday and not feeling right, you know, and it could be a severe case of, you know, almost leading to suicidal thoughts or anything like that, and they could call that depression. Depression is one of those things that has many definitions in today's society, and I think when someone comes into me and says, "Look, I'm depressed," well, I want to understand what they see depression as. I don't want to assume I understand where they're coming from. Right. You know, if they come in and say, "I'm depressed," what's that look like in your life? Yeah. You know, and then that gives them a chance to really talk it out and say, "Well, this is what it looks like." And when I ask that, I can guarantee you, I've never heard two answers the same.
Yeah, I bet.
So yeah.
Are there ever situations where somebody might explain a situation where they feel they are depressed, and you go, in your mind, maybe that's not that big of a thing. This is life. You know, you're going through a kind of trying situation, but it's not depression. Does that ever happen? Do we throw the word around? Is what I'm asking. I hear it all the time.
We can. I'm depressed. We can. The whole thing with sitting down with a client is, and everybody has a different style when they counsel. Yeah. And one thing I would never do is assume that my opinion's the right opinion, because
I'm the same way.
You know,
Trust me.
If I come across and I say, you know, that's not the textbook definition of depression, that's not even close. What that creates is okay, I'm not being heard. Right. I'm not being understood. Right. Yes, it has become one of those terms that you kind of slap on anything that doesn't feel right. But I think you really have to draw that out, even if, as a counselor, I'm sitting there and thinking, okay, this doesn't really seem like depression, but I want to understand fully where they're coming from before I press on here. Yeah. And so that's what I try to do when I sit down with clients.
I just wonder sometimes, there was a situation for me a while ago where I was going through a tough time. I talked to a friend about it. The friend was really great at listening and understanding everything, and then said back to me, you know, should I be concerned about you? And I was just kind of, well, what do you mean? And said, you know, well, you know, you sound like you might have mild depression. And I thought, in my mind, I almost panicked. I was like, whoa, am I? But then I thought, well, no, I'm going through a tough time. This is life. I mean, everybody goes through that. Does that come at a cost sometimes that we throw that word around a bit? Isn't that kind of risky? Do you think?
Well, on one side, yeah. On the other side, it's important to ask a direct question like that. Yeah. And for the simple fact that you don't know. Yeah. And you know, along with depression comes things like suicide. Sure. And you know, at that point, you don't want to be playing around. I mean, it's important to ask the question of concern, because you know, among counselors, I mean, you look at people that are depressed, you know, the rate of successful suicide is 1% per year of people suffering from depression, and that's pretty high. Yeah. You know, over the course of a career of a counselor, I mean, you can have several clients that successfully kill themselves, and so it's important to ask the question. But at the same time, you know, as far as in everyday language, using the word depression. Yeah, absolutely. I think we take the tough days and the times when we're tired or just have that little bit of extra weight and slap the label on where it doesn't belong.
But if there's a period where you're going through something and it just doesn't seem to go away, or there's situation after situation after situation, then it could certainly be used in those situations, I imagine, Our time's really quickly winding down, but before we wrap up, I just want to come back to a question that I think we've already hit a couple times in the show, but just as a bit of a wrap up, dealing with the winter blues, what are the best ways to get over the depression that we might be going through this time of year? We've talked about exercise, we've talked about mental health. Is there any closing comments maybe?
I would like to just put a little plug in here.
Sure.
The two of them offer a group in Moncton at, the Amsterdam Inn on Thursday nights for a support group for this type of thing. Simply getting together and sharing your experiences, and that is, I personally go to that group and find it to be very powerful, just to be able to hear that, I struggle with things and maybe I'm a little nuts, but at the same time I'm very normal, because there's lots of other people out there like that too.
Yeah. Anything else maybe? Anything else that...
I think what came to mind is the fact that, sometimes we tend to think of depression as just, this one unit, and often there are other factors, right? I mean, as I said earlier, whether financial or whatever, these other factors come into play, and they're there. They need to be looked at as well.
Yeah. Drew? Final word.
just don't be afraid if failure comes knocking on the door, kind of thing. We all struggle, we all have to go through those seasons. Find alternatives, find outlets where you can just, enjoy life.
Look, I really appreciate you all taking the time to come in here again. This is a really cool conversation to have. We'll do this again.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Thank you for watching at home. We're off until next Monday night. We're having some guests on with a show called Generation Sex that Rogers Television does out of Moncton. So we're looking forward to that one. Then on Tuesday, we're talking about a very popular New Brunswick calendar that has got New Brunswick artists and New Brunswick photographers' work featured in it. Then on Wednesday of next week, we're going to be having a discussion about Black History Month. So those are our shows next week. Enjoy your night. Hope that you have a good rest of week as well. We'll talk to you soon.
Host clothing provided by Mark's Work Warehouse.
Call the Rogers Television Viewer Response Line at 1-888-307-8862 or visit our website with your comments.
It's a void. It's a plane. No, wait, it's... What the heck is it?
That's weird.
It's Acady Man, the fleeced Acadian superhero.
Friggin' Twin Peaks.
You won't see this superhero leaping over any tall buildings. Woohoo! But you will see him exclusively on Rogers Television. Catch him if you can, Saturdays on Rogers English and French networks.
Okay, that's it, that's all.
Could I get a refill? Please.
Luke, show the class your drawing.
Your world right now, only on Rogers Television.
The Movie Network is proud to present the newest addition to our video on demand lineup. HBO Movies, specials, and critically acclaimed series. Favorites including Curb, Rome, and coming soon, Season 6 of The Sopranos. The Movie Network On Demand delivers hit movies, series, and now the best of HBO, all part of your subscription. No other network has it. HBO, only on the Movie Network.
Make it part of your personal TV experience, exclusively from Rogers Digital Cable.
Table. Where did you get it? Yes. A flea market?
See, I knew you would get it on the first guess.
Isn't it cool? It's an apothecary table.
Wow. Oh, you could just imagine that this is where they kept all the stuff to make their potions. Ooh. You know?
Yes.
Ooh, you can almost smell the opium.
Almost.
Oh, how much was it?
Just only $500.
$500 at a flea market?
Oh, okay. See, I thought you meant how much was it when it was new? You know, like back then.
Oh no,
yeah, no. I mean, it was at a flea market, so it was, it was like $1.
$1?
And 50. So like it was like $1 and $50.
Oh, okay. Oh, they gave you the old time pricing.
Yeah.
Well, what period is it from?
It's from yore, like the days of yore,